So Microsoft was my first real employment. I was hired as a software engineer in test. So back then, Microsoft still had software engineers, and they had software engineers in test. So the
Okay, so let's start for today's Cloud episode 16. And as you can see, we have the Peter here. Those who don't know the Peter, he is my ex-colleague. He works at Solo. He has tremendous experience in a lot of fields around the application networking, Kubernetes, Istio, and talk about anything. He will answer on that. So other thing is Peter has diverse. He is working currently at Solo and he's building nice blocks. He has experienced networking in the Istio. He has build some blocks which is two I will suggest excellent blocks. Like if you want to learn the Istio, I will divert you directly to Twitter for the networking the Istio and how to do the stuff around the Kubernetes and play around application networking. So let's go ahead. Peter, can you introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Rohit. So my name is Peter. I'm currently a platform advocate at solo.io. I've been in the tech industry for a pretty long time. Whenever you think back, it's like, oh, it's been 5 years. And then you think a little bit harder. And it's like, no, it's 10. But then in reality, it's been 16 plus, So it's always interesting to look back. But yeah, I've been in tech for a long time. I started my career at Microsoft. So Microsoft was my first real employment. I was hired as a software engineer in test. So back then, Microsoft still had software engineers, and they had software engineers in test. So the testers, or SDETs, as we called ourselves back then, we would do, of course, testing the software, right? And then also writing a lot of code, testing code to test the product. Not necessarily unit tests per se. Those were the devs that were writing, but we were more on testing the products, automation, a lot of stuff around there. So I've been there for, I think, 10 years at Microsoft. I worked on Visual Studio, worked on SharePoint tooling, Office tooling. For a little bit, I worked on Windows Phone as well. And then went back to the developer division, and I worked on, the last thing that I worked there on was VS Code. I was working on Visual Studio Code, some extensions there. Docker, that's when Docker was starting to come up really fast. Kubernetes, right? And we started working on tooling for Kubernetes. So yeah, that's where I actually started my, I would say, well, let's say cloud native career, if you want to call it that way, right? Those last couple of years at Microsoft it was literally in our team, the manager came in and said, hey, I have these Macs here. We need someone to figure out what is this Docker thing? What is this VS Code? Because VS Code was developed by a separate team, right? So, and I was working on that. Then I was working on Visual Studio, right? Which was the big full-blown development environment, right? So I grabbed that Mac, installed it. That was my first time using a Mac, right? And then I dived into VS Code, TypeScript, JavaScript, Docker, and then we slowly moved into Kubernetes and doing those things, and then service meshes and everything else that followed, right? So that was my first, I would say, 10 years of my professional career, and then after that, I went to Oracle for a couple of years. What I was planning to do there, what the idea was there, is to work on a microservices platform, which was an idea that is similar to what Istio is today, I guess, in a sense, right? The feature-wise, right? But back then, we're trying to make it as a platform, right? In OCI Oracle Cloud, right? That was a great. Yeah, it was a great project. I guess it didn't pan out. I also worked a little bit on Oracle Functions, so their functionalized product, and then I moved to my first startup, Tetrade, where I worked on service meshes, and now I'm at Solo, where I'm working even more on service meshes on Istio specifically, right? So that's where I did the whole deep dive into Istio, specifically deep dive into Envoy, right? And all these different things, how they fit together, I guess.
Understood. So, as to summarize, you work from Microsoft and Oracle, then Tetrade, and then Solo, all around different technologies, different programming languages, and now you are at Istio service mesh, focusing a lot on the Istio service mesh and moving ahead for the future of the Istio service mesh. So yeah, it is really nice to experience your journey. So also you started your journey as a tech person from the start, or you were at different phases of industry, and then also I saw you are also focused around community building, teaching the folks. So how you find that stuff? Like it is also like platform advocate. So it is like it is some kind of a developer advocacy role at Solo, right? So it needs the community engagement, it needs the brand awareness, it needs the like technical education hunger, right? So what do you feel about that? Like you are in the developer side, and how today you are at the platform advocacy side.
Yeah,
I'm excited to learn that. Yeah.
yeah. So I don't even know how that switch happened, but I always consider myself. I still consider myself an engineer, right? And as I say, started as a tester, and then I didn't do the whole progression. Tester, a developer, right? Because Microsoft moved everyone to developers. I was a team manager for a little bit, then went back to do the developer, like individual contributor side. And then same at Oracle. And then somehow I moved from like actually working on the product, which I mean, it's interesting, right? For me, the only downside of working on a product is that you get very deep into one specific thing, one specific feature. Specifically, with my experience working on bigger products, right? You can't do everything, right? You have to focus on a specific thing. But then always as a tester, you were actually always using the product, right? As an end user, right? You were testing it. So you have that broad, but not very deep knowledge of not necessarily, right? A deep knowledge of a certain thing, right? But you had a great overview of the whole product, right? So I like that aspect of that role, right? And kind of when I moved to doing more of a DevRel, platform advocate, content creation, I even say, right, type of role, it almost feels like that tester role in a way, because you're learning about the product, right? You're trying things out, you're writing about it, right? You're talking about it, you're creating talks, you're creating blog posts, you're creating videos, whatever it is, right? You're creating content. So I like the aspect of learning something new, and then as I learn, writing that down, and then there you go, you have a blog post all of a sudden, right? It's very, it almost comes natural, right? When we used to test the product, right? We would go, okay, so I have this scenario that I have to test or I have to figure it out. So that would either be written down or you have it in your head or something, right? And then you would go and test it and see, oh, this is what should happen, this is what shouldn't. So it feels like content creation is very similar, right? In terms of, I want to learn about the new product, right? So what do? Well, I have to install it, and then I have to read the docs, and then I have to do this. And it's like almost like a step-by-step thing that you have to do. And then you always ask yourself, well, if I do this, what should happen, right? I know the documentation says this should happen, but does it really happen, right? Let's go and take a look, right? And then you can go and dig. And that's how I do my like content creation today as well, right? It's try to figure it out, install it, figure it out, go through it, but then actually start and dig deeper, right? Oh, so if I do this here, what does it affect somewhere else? How does it look like, right? Example with Istio, right? Whenever you apply an Istio resource, right, that results in a Envoy proxy configuration, right? So you can just apply it and check it and it says, oh, it works, right? But then you can also dig deeper and say, okay, well, let me actually take a look what gets generated, right? And learn about that. So that's how I go about, I guess, creating content and learning about.
Yeah.
So my switch was from, I would say, I still consider myself an engineer, but the switch was more from like actually writing on the product code, doing product code, more to creating proof of concepts, creating sample code, right? Thinking about the product, writing about the product. And then, of course, like during my career, I went from, you mentioned languages, right? Programming languages, went from like C# to JavaScript to TypeScript to Go, all Python. I went through all of them. But you pick the tool that makes most sense, right? Like, want to do some backend thing, you're going to probably, I'm assuming, go Go or Rust, right? But if you want to do front end, you'll do TypeScript, of course, right? So it's...
Yeah, I think you work a lot, and you're always eager to learn about the new things, and then you directly implement it. And I have worked with Peter, so I experienced that thing. Like he's never off duty; he will always on duty. So it's like, if you, I will try this out, and I will make the content. Like the person is like, so one of the interesting part is like when Peter joined the company, he just like few weeks, only 1 week, I guess. Then he was like publishing the blogs like anything from start of the week. So it is really natural for him. Like he doesn't require any like content creation to learn or something. It comes naturally for him because he has experienced that technically from the long time. That's why I focus on like telling everyone like focus on the fundamentals, then go ahead on the what you want to do and what you want to build, right? So otherwise it will be a problem if you don't have the fundamentals clear. So one of the important factor which it comes into DevOps is like you should be having the networking fundamentals. And Peter is a guy who has like a lot of experience on online networking and stuff. So Peter, like what you will tell to the means like what you can recommend to the folks who are eager to learn the Kubernetes networking or Istio networking. Like there is not a lot of things available to learn about these things. Also, they find the problem in contributing to the open source projects which are available, like Kubernetes, Istio, Cilium, and all that. There are a lot of good source issues. There are some issues, but still it is problem because they are high level language written there, and people get scared of it. So, what you recommend from the network to the open source?
Yeah, it's very I guess it's very hard because all of these projects are so big and huge, and there's a lot of layers on top of it, right? And I always struggled with, like, I wrote an Istio course years ago, and then I created a Kubernetes course years ago as well, I guess. But it was always a problem, like, how far back do you go, right? You want to learn about Istio? Okay, so if you want to learn about Istio, then you have to understand how Kubernetes deployments work, right? Like how Kubernetes deployments works, what does the Kubernetes services do, right? In order to understand Istio, right? And technically that's enough, I guess, if you want to do like a shallow, very, very, very shallow understanding of a very, very high level thing, right? But then you go back, it's like, okay, so if I'm talking about Kubernetes deployments, right? Kubernetes deployments, there's a lot of things. One of them is you have to specify a Docker image, an image that you want to run, right? What is a Docker image, right? So then you go even back. Okay, now I have to explain what Docker is. So let's learn about Docker, right? And then you go and you talk about that. And then you can think about, okay, well, but how does Docker work? There's network namespaces. There's like C groups. Okay, so now I have to go back to the Linux foundations, right? And just learn about the basic fundamentals of like concepts and features of Linux just to understand. And we started up here with Istio, right? And then went down the stack. Now, the thing is, there's multiple approaches that one could learn about these things, right? You could do just go dive in and then learn what you need and only what you need to understand the top level thing. Or you can say, I want to learn about Istio, go to Kubernetes and then spread out and learn everything there is about Kubernetes. And I'll talk now, or actually Docker, right? And spread out, and then Kubernetes and spread out, and Istio and spread out, right? I think there's no best approach, right? It's whatever works best for you. Whenever I want to learn about new technology, what I do is I'm going to read about it first. There's always good documentation on things, right? I'm going to write it down. I don't know. I did a talk on Spire a couple of months back, right? Spiffy Spire, right? What is Spiffy Spire, right? How do you start learning? Well, you go to a website, you look at what the definition is, and then you underline the words that you don't understand theoretically, right? It's like, oh, it's this, but what is this? And then you go learn about those things. And that's how you spread, right? And that's how you learn. And then you learn how these different components fit together in a bigger ecosystem, right? And then in terms of like contributing to open source, right? I mean, that's a great goal, right? I think I wouldn't have that as my like first goal. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I'm going to contribute to open source and get it done. It's going to be out there. No, it's not going to happen tomorrow, right? There's so many things that one has to do, right? Especially if you're thinking about contributing code. Right. So there's a lot of things that I'm not even thinking about, like installing everything, making your development environment, like all those things, like just publishing a PR. Sometimes it's like, oh, I have to read all those things to make sure that it's named like this, tested like that. And I need to do this. There's a lot of steps there. And I don't know, some people might get discouraged by it, right? Because there's so many like processes and everything. But to go back, one of the easiest ways that I found for people to start contributing to open source is go read the documentation. Pick any open source project there is out today, any of them. If you spend an hour reading through the documentation, I bet you $1 that you'll find a typo. You'll find something, someone misspelled something somewhere. There's a typo somewhere. There you go. That's your first contribution. That's how you learn. Yeah, easiest way to learn. You don't have to necessarily install any tooling, right? It's just a markdown typically that you will have to edit. Make a change like that, right? Start with that and then start learning about the product, right? And a lot of these are as I mentioned, there's a lot to these products, and it's not like everyone understands everything. There probably are people, right? But you will have to focus on some feature area, I guess, right? Focus on something, start learning about that, and then try contributing. And if you want to do code contributions, start with tests, right? Those are probably the easiest and the simplest way to get started from the code perspective, right? Instead of implementing a new feature, right, or fixing a bug, go and look at the test coverage, add a test, improve a test, right? Remove a test if it doesn't make sense, right? It is definitely easier than going into implementing a feature. You're not going to implement a feature right away. It's not just, oh, I created this new feature, accept it. No, that's not how it works, right? Like there's process for it, right? You probably have to, in some cases, you'll have to write a design document. People will have to review it, you have to talk about it, you have to present it. So if I was starting from scratch, from zero, I guess, and then learning learning about these things, right, as well, is there's a lot of documentation out there. There's a lot of, documentation is your first place where you start, right? Documentation, there's a lot of articles from other people as well. There's a lot of videos. There's a lot of stuff on YouTube. Theoretically, you don't even have to spend any money, right? I'm not saying courses are not valuable, right? They definitely are, right? But if you really want to get started and you want to be scrappy about it, I don't want to spend a lot of money, you don't have to, right? You can learn like that, right? And there are values, right? There are values in courses, right? But then once you get to that point, it's more of I like the way this person teaches the subject. That's why I'm going to buy this course. You're not going to buy a course because there's no documentation anywhere about it, Most of the courses out there, at least the ones that I've seen, you can find everything online already.
Kubernetes,
right?
Kubernetes is one of the examples.
Yeah, if you think about Kubernetes, there's a lot of stuff that's documented. It's just a matter of how much time you want to spend, right? Searching for it, or in some cases, stuff might not be documented very well. And that means that you would have to look into the code, for example, right? To go and actually figure out how this works so you can talk about it, explain it, right? And that's where you can add value as well, right? Think about it as a content creator, right? You could add value with, this is not documented well, or no one is talking about this, or everyone is asking about it, but no one knows, right? Or everyone pretends they know. There's a lot of people like that as well, like a lot of people are like pretending they know how something works, but they actually don't know how it works because no one asks them. And some of the reasons people don't ask them how this works is because they fear how they will look like if they ask, right? And basically admit that they don't know how it works. So it's almost like, and I'm pretty sure there's cases like that. Like people are like discussing some big things and like 5% of people in the room actually know what they're talking about, or know the whole, but that's just the way it is. There's nothing wrong with it, right? But my point is, go and figure it out for yourself, right? Because you're going to get value out of it.
Yeah.
Hey, you can write a blog post about it later, right? If you want to and publish it. So
that is also one of the way where you can learn, asking the doubts and all. So like it was nice pointers you mentioned for sure. And like highly, like everyone in like cloud native and people around me, they only focus on educating the folks and asking them to learn from the documentation and not just from the courses. Courses are good, but like if you want to spend money and if you want to get planned, structured kind of a program, so courses are good for sure.
There's value in structure for sure, right? If someone's like, I don't even know where to start, there's a value in that, right? Having a pointer of start here, right? But a lot of one thing that I want to add, a lot of things that I've noticed, not throughout my career, but maybe even more recently in like the last year or two, is a lot of people will just go and ask the question, directly to someone about something without even doing a simple Google search first. And I think that's the root cause. Like it's almost if there's one skill every new engineer should know how to do is Googling for stuff. Like you have to know how to search for the answers instead of going directly and asking the question, right? There's nothing wrong with asking a question, but make sure you do your due diligence first, right? Before you go and ask a question, right? That's how I look at it. That's how I do things. Like if I get stuck in something, I'm going to spend at least an hour trying to figure it out first before I'm going to go and ask someone, hey, how do you do this, right? Because I will feel like I'm wasting their time, because now they have to spend time answering something very simple to me that could have been answered by a simple Google search,
Yes.
Always, that's why I like to ask people, whenever they have questions, their questions is, the first question that you ask is, what have you tried so far? Like, what are the things that you tried that either didn't work or you can find them or whatever it was that prompted you to ask this question, And that's typically like, oh no, I just came to you to ask a question. Well, go and do it, right? I'm not trying to you're not being mean here, right? It's more of you have to like, because you're also learning how to ask the right question in a way, right? Sometimes it's very hard. Like sometimes if you're very new to some tech, it is very hard to Google for a question because you don't really know what you're trying to ask. In that case, sure, ask, right? Ask a high level, broad question like, but if you're very technical specific on something, you should do your due diligence first and then go ask questions later, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with that point for sure. So, yeah, we discussed a lot of things for sure in just one question for sure. But yeah, I would definitely ask you about one of the things which is quite trending nowadays, which is like platform engineering, like your platform advocate. So, what do you see the future of platform engineering, where it is going, and also about Kubernetes, like where it is going? And when it comes to the platform engineering Kubernetes, I would also like to ask you about like eBPF for sure. And as I see a lot of buzz around Istio and eBPF integrations in the future, as well as there is a Rust-based tunnel you're providing, I mean, like for zero trust security. So yeah, a lot of things, and people are literally confused about what is happening. Yeah, so can you put light on that?
I'll try. I try to like stay away from like future predictions of things because it's very hard to predict anything, and you might be right, and then you're like, yeah, I predicted it correctly, but if you're not, then you're quiet, But so I'll stay away from the predictions and where everything is going. But in terms of like eBPF and stuff, I can talk about it in terms of like Istio service mesh and ambient mesh, right? So ambient mesh, if I talk about Istio in general, what is Istio? It's just a framework to connect, secure, and manage your microservices, your workloads, right? And typically how it works, or traditionally, I guess, is as the calls are being made between different workloads, there's a sidecar, there's a proxy, envoy proxy that runs next to each service instance, next to each workload, and that proxy intercepts all the calls, right? So service A calls service B. What happens is the call goes from service A to the sidecar proxy, from the sidecar proxy to service B sidecar proxy, and then from that proxy to the actual workload or service B, right? But what does that give you? That gives you the way to intercept the traffic, right? So all the traffic flows through the proxies, right? So it's like an interception point where you can do circuit breakers, where you can do traffic routing, where you can collect metrics, right? Where you can do all these nice things, right? All the observability you can get out. Right? So that's the sidecar model, or traditional Istio deployment model, right? And then later, like earlier last year, I think it was last year, beginning of last year, right? Solo was working with Google, and they came up with so-called ambient mesh. Right? So what is ambient mesh? What's the idea there? So the idea is that instead of having these sidecars next to every service instance or workload instance, is you take those proxies and you pull them out and you put a single proxy on the node level. So now we have one node with a proxy, one proxy on that node, and all the workloads running on the node. So now when service A tries to talk to service B, what happens is that sidecar or Z-tunnel proxy, let's call it a node proxy, we call it Z-tunnel proxy, right? That's what it is. That proxy intercepts the traffic, right? So it's not proxy next to the service, there's no proxy next to the service anymore, right? It's on the node level, it intercepts the traffic, and then that proxy then redirects the traffic to the destination, right? Now, there's another change that happened with this move to a per node proxy. The L4 and L7 concerns were separated, right? Previously, when you had a sidecar proxy, all the stack concerns, I guess, the L4, L7, up to L7, all was done at that sidecar proxy, right? So if you wanted to do a apply an authorization policy based on HTTP method or a path, for example, right, or a URI path, right? That's L7. All that was done there, right? But now the concerns are separated. So L4 concerns happen at that Z-tunnel proxy, per node proxy, and then if you need any L7 concerns, if you need to handle any of those concerns, you can deploy a proxy called a waypoint proxy that can be either deployed per namespace or per service account. And we're talking Kubernetes now. Right? So what's going to happen? Service A is going to make a call to service B. The packets are going to go to the Z-tunnel proxy. The Z-tunnel proxy will see from the configuration, hey, is there any L7 authorization policy that I have to apply, right? If there is, well, I'm an L4 proxy. I don't know how to apply that, but I know there's a waypoint proxy that I can call. So that Z-tunnel is going to redirect the traffic to that L7 waypoint proxy. That proxy is going to apply the authorization policy, do whatever it needs to do, and then that proxy is going to redirect the traffic to the destination. Now, all of these calls that were happening were the redirection rules by default are done with IP tables, right? So IP tables is a Linux utility you can call, right? Where you can write rules that define what happens when the packets enter the host, exit the host, what happens if the packets are originating from a local host, if the packets are originating from the outside. It basically allows you to redirect the packets, right? So when we say service A is calling service B, when that call is being made, the IP tables on the node are intercepting that and saying, oh, is this coming from a workload that's part of the ambient mesh? If it is, redirect it to the zTunnel proxy. So that's what IP tables do, right? Now, IP tables are pretty much a list of rules that get processed sequentially, right? So as you have more services, as you have more workloads, right, those rules can grow, but they're still processed sequentially, so they can be very slow. So what eBPF does is eBPF allows you to program those rules, right? So if you think about it gives you an extension point that says, call this program when the traffic enters or leaves, right? So instead of writing IP tables rules, this, do that, go here, intercept, whatever, right? You're literally writing a C program that does the same thing. It does the if this and then this, right? Send it there, right? Yeah. So it's sending it directly. So what happens there is that's way faster than the IP tables rules, right? It's way faster, right? It makes everything work much faster, I guess. So if I tie it back to the ambient mesh will be able to do the redirection with eBPF as well, not just IP tables rules, right? So that's the extent of my self-learned,
Yeah.
In terms of what's in the future, I don't I'm very hard to predict anything.
Yeah, nowadays it is too hard. There is a lot of new projects are developing day by day. Every day there is a new thing. So yes, where actually the Istio service mesh and eBPF and Cilium comes into the picture at the platform engineering, where it comes into the picture. And there is a lot of buzz around the backstage right nowadays. So what do you think on that also?
Yeah, so I haven't actually looked at the backstage, to be completely honest. I can't intelligently talk about it.
No worries.
Maybe you can talk about it more, but I haven't looked at that at all, so I can't.
No worries. But yeah, it is common doubts from everyone, where actually the Istio service mesh and eBPF come into the picture, as well as Cilium when we talk about platform engineering.
Yeah. So Cilium, right? Cilium is a CNI, right? Container network interface, which is so CNI is basically just think of it as a collection of specifications and libraries, right? That allow you to develop plugins in order to configure, right, network interfaces in Linux containers, right? So a CNI is, when you install a Kubernetes cluster, there's always going to be, more or less, is going to be a CNI there, be it Cilium, whatever it is, whichever it is installed, right, with your Kubernetes drop or wherever you're creating a cluster, right? But the idea of a CNI plugin is to, whenever pods get added or removed from your cluster, right, they need an IP address, right? That's just the simplest thing that they need, right? So they need to get an IP address. Who gives your container an IP address, right? Well, that's what the CNI plugin does, right? It basically connects the container's network namespace to the host's network namespace, and then it assigns the IP address to it, right? It assigns the IP address to the pod, or to the container rather, and then sets up all the routes, right? Like if you think about the Kubernetes service, right? How does the routing there work? How does the load balancing work, right? That's what the CNI sets up, right? Now this can be done with IP tables. This can be done with eBPF, right? But this is pretty much what Cilium does as well, right? It's a container network interface that implements the networking concerns, I guess.
Yeah,
right?
Helps in traffic direction from here to there and stuff.
Yeah, but think of it as it helps with that, but it helps with your containers need IPs, right? Your Kubernetes service needs an IP, and your Kubernetes service needs to know what are the backing IPs, right? So that's how I see the CNI, right? Cilium, also what Cilium does is in Kubernetes, when you install Kubernetes, there's a resource called network policy, right? Now that network policy, the implementation of the network policy is done by the CNI. So you have to install a CNI to get that implementation of the policy. So Cilium has that implementation, provides the implementation for the network policy, and then it also adds the two new custom resources, the Cilium network policy and Cilium cluster-wide network policy, right? Which are built on top of the network policies, but have more features, right? So what those things allow you to do is to define the network policy, right? So you can basically say, allow traffic to enter this pod from this IPs, right? From these namespaces, from these like pod labels, right? It allows you to basically do the policies to allow or deny traffic from and or to the pods, right? So that's how I see the Cilium CNI, right? Service mesh adds the stuff on top of it, right? It connects everything together with L7 policies, right? It establishes mutual TLS by default, right, across all your services, right? One thing that people don't understand is, well, not don't understand, they don't realize it right away, right? But if you have a Kubernetes cluster running, if you have workloads there, if you install Istio ambient mesh or Istio mesh, all your services will automatically get mutual TLS between them, right? All those connections will be protected by right away, right? You don't have to do anything, right? So you get that. That's a given. And then there's the whole observability features, right, of the mesh, all the metrics that you get, and of course the extensibility, right? You can extend the mesh cross clusters, but also extending the mesh in terms of writing WASM plugins, for example, if you want to, right? To add some extra functionality on top of that, right?
Exactly. So yeah, like we learned a lot today around the Istio service mesh, Kubernetes, and Cilium for sure. So to conclude, like we have all the things here. So you also have your Learn Cloud Radio, right? So where you publish a lot of blogs and a lot of content around the Kubernetes issue and all. So I will surely share that link in the comments or description so people can learn from that. He also has the Kubernetes and Istio networking like demos on his profile YouTube channel. So I will tag that channel. You can go and check it out, our audience. And if you need anything around the Istio service mesh, if you have doubts around the platform engineering where like Istio service mesh comes into the picture, actually what it is this, I guess audience learn high level about what is service mesh and how the things work. And if you are still confused, like what is L4, what is L7, if you are still a beginner kind of a thing, so I would highly recommend checking out first the fundamentals around the networking, then Kubernetes and containers and stuff. Then you can ask doubts. And as Peter told, like don't directly come with the question without googling it and asking the chat GPT.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to go to the library anymore. You don't have to it doesn't have to take you like 3 hours to figure things out. But yeah, I mean, if you want to learn about these things specifically, like Istio Kubernetes, Solo has Academy Solo.io. We have a great course on network foundations, which will give you all the basics. Way better explained than I was able to explain it in this like 10 minutes here. I'm prepared, right? But that course goes through all the network foundations, explains all the basics that you have to understand. In some cases, I feel like it even goes deeper, than just the fundamentals or foundations. But it's a really great thing to like get a basic overview of things. I would start with that, just to know the network stuff. Then learn something about Kubernetes, figure out how Kubernetes works. And I would even say you don't have to learn about C groups and network namespaces. You don't. Practically in your work, you're not going to use that. You're not going to talk about that unless you're working on something that's very specific with that, right? But to get an overview of things, network foundations, do the Kubernetes, like check one of the videos out, check some like tutorials. Istio courses, Solo Academy has a lot of them as well, going from what is Istio to what is like Istio ambient mesh, and then even further on what is like, how do I deploy Istio for production, right? And we also have courses on like eBPF and Cilium if you want to look at that as well, right? So there's a lot of different branches that you can go and discover. But if you're new, if you're trying to learn, network foundations is definitely the first one to go with. That's what I would suggest.
Yeah. So also like one of the best things, like it is interactive and hands-on labs, so you can try it out. Yeah.
You don't need your Kubernetes cluster, you don't need your VMs, you don't need anything. You just need a browser more or less.
Yeah.
And everything is done in the browser. Yeah.
So yeah, all the best. Who want to learn or something, you can ask the doubts whenever you have in the comments, or you can reach out to Peter or me for sure. We will surely love to help you. So thanks, Peter, for joining our today's session. It was really amazing to have you on the stage. Hope so we will come again in the future for something related, more deep dive into something like deeper dive into the networking or Kubernetes or Istio in like practical things. So thanks for joining today, and thanks audience for joining today and listening to us. So if you have any doubts, you can ask that in comments, as well as like, share, and subscribe for sure if you like our content. I would love to share. I would love to share more of these people coming here and share their knowledge, because it is not just it's like we are not inviting just from like one teacher or something. I'm focusing on entire world, like wherever there is a huge talent, we will invite them and push here. So Peter is one of the talent. So thanks for having today. Yeah.
Thank you, Rohit.